The warning was archived as a formality, filed, translated, acknowledged, and ignored. Across the spiral arms, the Nigma Empire had ruled for longer than recorded memory. Their fleets moved with mathematical precision. Their wars ended before enemies understood they had begun. They did not conquer out of hatred or ambition, but from certainty, the belief that survival belonged only to those strong enough to enforce order. Earth was not considered strong, it was catalogued as a noisy, volatile world orbiting an unremarkable star. High gravity. Chaotic climate. A species divided by culture, language, and history. Technologically ambitious, yes, but emotionally unstable, prone to internal conflict. Inefficient governance, and an alarming tolerance for risk, a death world species that should have burned itself out. When the warning arrived, short, calm, unmistakably human, it was treated as curiosity rather than threat. Do not challenge us, survival is not guaranteed. Nigma analysts debated the phrasing. No bluster. No grandstanding. No attempt at intimidation. Just a statement of probability, delivered without emotion. That alone was unusual. Civilizations that begged for mercy used dramatic language. Civilizations that threatened used displays of power. Humans did neither. The Empire's decision followed centuries of precedent. A limited demonstration of force would be enough. A border incursion. A swift strike against orbital infrastructure. A reminder of hierarchy. They would teach the Deathworlders restraint. The first Nigma fleet entered the Sol system in flawless formation, slipping from folded space like blades drawn from silk. Their ships were elegant, crescent-shaped constructs of living alloy and adaptive energy fields, designed to overwhelm opposition before resistance could form. They expected panic. Instead, they found stillness. Earth did not scramble its fleets. No frantic broadcasts flooded the void. No planetary shields flared to life in desperation. Human vessels waited in low orbit, scattered, mismatched, scarred by use rather than ornamentation. Old ships. New ships. Civilian hulls refitted with military plating. Experimental designs flying beside vessels that should have been retired decades earlier. It looked disorganized. Nigma commanders adjusted threat assessments upward, slightly, then the humans transmitted again. This time, the message carried weight not through volume, but through restraint. It listed no demands. It named no threats. It simply outlined consequences, not what humanity would do, but what would happen. You will escalate, we will adapt, you will lose ships, we will lose people, we will continue. There was something deeply unsettling in that last line, not defiance, acceptance. The Nigma Empire struck first. Energy lances tore through space, precise and devastating. 2 human ships vanished in expanding halos of light. A third split apart, debris scattering like ash across the stars. Still, Earth did not retreat. Human vessels surged forward, not in formation, but in motion, erratic, unpredictable, accelerating at angles no standard tactical doctrine recommended. They fired weapons that seemed crude by Imperial standards, kinetic projectiles, rail-driven slugs, fusion warheads designed for proximity rather than precision. They missed often, but when they hit, the damage was shocking. Nigma shields, optimized for energy dissipation and harmonic defense, buckled under brute force impacts delivered at relativistic speed. One Imperial cruiser lost maneuvering control entirely, its elegant hull torn open by a storm of metal traveling too fast to fully register on sensors. Human ships closed the distance. That was when the Empire understood its first mistake. Humans fought like a species that expected to be heard. They did not flinch when alarms screamed. They did not disengage when shields failed. Damaged ships stayed in the fight long past any rational retreat threshold, using failing reactors as weapons, ramming trajectories as tactics, debris fields as cover. An Nigma battleship detonated when a crippled human frigate, its engines gone, hull venting atmosphere, collided with it at full burn, triggering a cascade failure that Imperial simulations had deemed statistically negligible. The word negligible was quietly removed from future reports. As the battle escalated, something else emerged, something no algorithm could quantify. human coordination. They communicated constantly, not just through encrypted data channels, but through instinctive patterns of movement. When one ship faltered, others shifted without command. When a gap appeared, it was filled. When an opportunity emerged, it was exploited with frightening speed. This was not chaos, it was adaptive order. Nigma commanders attempted escalation protocols, deploying higher-tier weapons and autonomous combat constructs. The response was immediate. Humans altered tactics again, drawing constructs into overlapping fields of fire, sacrificing ships to disable control relays, turning numerical disadvantage into localized superiority. The Empire began losing vessels at a rate that defied projection, and Earth was still holding back. That truth became undeniable when new human signatures appeared on long-range sensors. Not warships, but platforms. Massive structures unfolding in orbit, powered by reactors that flared like miniature suns, defense arrays, planetary-scale weapons humanity had never displayed beyond their own system. The warning had not been a bluff, it had been a courtesy, as Nigma forces pulled back to reassess. Human ships did not pursue. They held position, battered and burning, silhouetted against the blue curve of their homeworld. Another transmission crossed the void, quieter than the last. You have now seen the beginning. The next phase will not be educational. Across the Nigma Empire, analysts worked in silence, rerunning simulations that no longer converged. Models spiraled into contradiction. Projections stretched into uncertainty. For the first time in Imperial history, expansion was paused, not by rebellion or resource scarcity, but by doubt, because the humans had not fought like conquerors, they had fought like survivors, and somewhere deep within the Imperial consciousness, an ancient instinct stirred, one older than empire, older than logic, fear. They warned us. The pause did not bring peace, it brought calculation. Across Nigma space, war councils convened in layered chambers of light and thought, replaying the battle above Earth from every possible angle. The data refused to settle. Human losses were high, higher than any rational species would tolerate, yet the humans had not retreated, not even after suffering damage that should have ended the engagement. This unsettled the Empire more than defeat ever could. Nigma doctrine had always assumed that survival instinct led to preservation. Withdraw, reassess, return with superior force. But humanity's behavior suggested a different equation entirely. Loss was not a deterrent. It was a cost already accounted for. The Empire chose escalation, not invasion. Not annihilation. Something cleaner. They targeted the margins. Outlying human colonies went dark without warning. Communications ceased mid-sentence. Supply convoys vanished between stars. No debris fields, no radiation spikes, no survivors. Just absence, carefully engineered to appear natural, accidental, unprovable. The message was subtle and deliberate. We can make you disappear quietly. Earth felt it like a tightening grip. Human response did not come in the form of public outrage or desperate diplomacy. It arrived as silence of a different kind. Fleets dispersed. Civilian traffic was rerouted. Research stations accelerated projects that had been buried beneath ethical debate and budgetary hesitation. Humanity did not broadcast its fear, it reorganized it. Deep beneath Earth's surface and far beyond its orbit, systems long considered theoretical were activated. Not weapons of raw destruction, but tools of understanding. Pattern recognition networks designed to detect absence. Predictive models tuned not to enemy presence, but to unnatural voids where something should exist. They began to map the shape of Nigma strategy by tracing its shadows. The first breakthrough came not from a general or an admiral, but from a civilian astrophysicist who noticed that the missing colonies aligned along improbably precise gravitational vectors. The disappearances were not random, they were tests. Nigma was measuring response time, resilience, and psychological breaking points. Humanity refused to break. Instead of reinforcing threatened colonies with fleets, humans evacuated them silently, leaving behind decoys, false populations, automated infrastructure, simulated life signs that mimicked organic behavior down to emotional variance. When the Nigma strike came, it found nothing real to erase, and when their void weapon activated, It left behind a signature it was never meant to leave. Human sensors caught it, a distortion in subspace, faint but consistent, like a fingerprint pressed into reality itself. Once seen, it could be tracked. Once tracked, it could be anticipated. Human fleets moved again, not in defense, but in interception. The first ambush occurred near a binary star system far from any inhabited world. A Nigma eradication vessel emerged from folded space, its systems already primed to erase another unseen colony. It never got the chance. Human ships struck from angles Nigma sensors had dismissed as impossible, weapons firing from beyond predictive arcs, gravity wells collapsing at precisely calculated moments. The Imperial vessel attempted to withdraw, humans let it run, then they followed. Across interstellar distances, the chase unfolded, not as pursuit, but as pressure. Humans did not close in. They herded. Every attempted escape route collapsed into hazard zones, every jump point subtly poisoned with interference fields. For the first time, a Nigma vessel was forced to retreat all the way back toward Imperial space. With humans still behind it, the Empire realized too late what had happened. The Deathworlders had learned how to see them, not just their ships, their methods. And once a predator understands how it is hunted, the balance shifts forever. Somewhere within the vast structure of the Nigma Empire, an ancient certainty fractured. Humanity was no longer a problem to be corrected. It was a variable that refused to stay contained. And variables, once unbound, have a way of rewriting entire systems. The first human ships to cross into Nigma border space did not announce themselves. They did not need to. The Empire felt them before it saw them, a disturbance spreading through sensor nets like a pressure change before a storm. Jump lanes flickered. Predictive models stalled. The flawless geometry of Imperial space, maintained for millennia, began to misalign in ways that made no logical sense. Humanity had not come to conquer, they had come to understand. The chased eradication vessel limped deeper into Imperial territory, broadcasting emergency signals that no Nigma commander wanted to acknowledge. Its systems reported impossible things, tracking shadows where no ships should exist. Weapons misfiring due to microvariations in local physics, navigational certainty dissolving into probability. Behind it, human fleets moved in dispersed constellations, never fully visible at once. They used mass in unconventional ways, dragging small artificial gravity wells through folded space, reshaping approach vectors in real time. Nigma defenses, optimized for symmetry and prediction, struggled to adapt. The first engagement inside Nigma space was brief and brutal. Imperial sentry ships moved to intercept, confident in numerical and technological superiority. Human vessels did not meet them head-on. They fragmented, each ship becoming a decision point rather than a unit. Weapons fired in sequences designed not to destroy immediately, but to overload decision matrices, forcing autonomous systems into hesitation. That hesitation cost lives. A Nigma cruiser detonated when its own shields failed to reconcile conflicting inputs. Another lost cohesion as internal gravity inverted for a fraction of a second, long enough to tear it apart from within. Human losses followed. Several ships vanished under concentrated Imperial fire, their destruction sudden and absolute. There was no hesitation from the remaining vessels. No attempt to recover wreckage. No pause to mourn. They kept moving. The Empire began deploying its deeper assets. Strategic constructs emerged from hidden anchor points, vast, faceted machines that bent space around them, relics from an era when the Nigma had learned to weaponize inevitability itself. Their presence stabilized local physics, restoring the Empire's advantage. For a moment, the advance stalled, then humanity changed again. Human ships cut power and drifted into the stabilized zones, relying on inertia and timing rather than propulsion. Crews navigated by observation, not calculation, slipping through the blind spots created by the construct's own fields. When they struck, it was at close range, weapons calibrated to disrupt structure rather than penetrate armor. The constructs began to fail, not catastrophically. Gradually. Subtly, enough to introduce doubt. That doubt spread through Imperial command like a contagion. Orders were delayed. Countermeasures conflicted. The once perfect flow of Nigma coordination degraded into overlapping priorities and defensive hesitation. In the midst of the chaos, humanity transmitted something unexpected, not a threat, data, captured sensor logs. Analyzed weapon signatures. Mathematical models predicting Nigma eradication patterns with terrifying accuracy. It was not sent as intimidation, but as proof. We see you now. The implication struck harder than any weapon. For the first time in their recorded history, the Nigma Empire faced an opponent who was not reacting to imperial power, but anticipating it. A species that treated warfare as a learning process rather than a contest of dominance. The battle line did not collapse, it bent. Human fleets pressed just far enough to make the point, then withdrew in coordinated silence, vanishing back into the dark before imperial reinforcements could fully engage. They left behind wreckage, disrupted constructs, and a single, undeniable truth echoing through Nigma command. The humans had entered their space, and left on their own terms. The Empire began to understand the deeper meaning of the warning it had ignored. Survival was not guaranteed, not because humans were unstoppable, but because they refused to stop learning. The Empire answered the incursion with something it had not used in living memory. Unity. Across Nigma space, fragmented commands were pulled back into alignment. Independent war clusters dissolved into a single strategic will. Ancient communication relays, dormant since the Empire's founding wars, ignited and synchronized entire sectors in perfect harmony. If humanity adapted through chaos, the Nigma would respond with absolute order. The counteroffensive began everywhere at once. Human listening posts detected the shift seconds before it manifested. Jump lanes stabilized unnaturally. Space itself seemed to lock into rigid patterns. Probability narrowed. Where once there had been uncertainty, there was now certainty imposed by force. Imperial fleets surged outward in disciplined waves. Their movement synchronized across light years. Each strike was calculated to sever human logistics, isolate fleets, and force decisive engagements under conditions favorable to Nigma doctrine. Human commanders saw the trap immediately, and stepped into it. Rather than scatter, human fleets consolidated. Task groups merged, forming dense, interlocking formations that flew against every principle of asymmetric warfare they had used so effectively before. To Nigma analysts, it looked like desperation. It was not. When the first major engagement erupted near a dead star system, the scale dwarfed anything before it. Thousands of vessels clashed amid gravity storms and radiation belts. Imperial firepower carved through human hulls with merciless efficiency. Ships died screaming into the void, and still the formation held. Human vessels absorbed punishment far beyond projected endurance limits, rotating damaged ships inward while fresh hulls took the outer line. Automated factories aboard carrier ships fabricated replacement components mid-battle. Crews fought fires, sealed breaches, and kept moving without pause. The Empire began to realize the cost of fighting a species that had evolved on a world where catastrophe was normal. Humanity used suffering as structure. As losses mounted, human tactics shifted again. Entire wings disengaged suddenly, leaving behind sensor ghosts and decoy signals. Imperial fleets pursued, only to find themselves drawn into overlapping kill zones where human fire converged from multiple vectors. Order fractured under its own rigidity. The moment came when the Empire deployed its final authority in the region, a command nexus ship, vast and radiant, designed to impose coordination on every unit within range. Its activation snapped Imperial fleets back into flawless alignment. For a heartbeat, the battle froze. Then the humans did something the Empire had never accounted for. They ignored it. Human fleets did not target the Nexus. They did not attempt to disrupt its control fields. Instead, they pushed past it, plunging deeper into Imperial territory, forcing Nigma commanders to choose between maintaining control or protecting their core systems. That hesitation lasted less than a second. It was enough. The Nexus ship's influence weakened as attention fractured. Human forces exploited the gap mercilessly, tearing through isolated squadrons and collapsing carefully constructed lines. When the Empire finally reasserted control, the battlefield had changed irreversibly. Human fleets withdrew again, slower this time, carrying their wounded and their dead. They did not claim victory. They did not need to. Across Nigma space, something far more dangerous than defeat had taken root: uncertainty. The Empire had faced enemies before. Rebels. Rivals. Extinction candidates. It had never faced a species that could endure overwhelming force, adapt within the battle itself, and then walk away stronger. As the stars settled into uneasy quiet, a realization echoed through Imperial consciousness. The humans were no longer testing the Empire, they were teaching it, and the lesson was far from over. The lesson continued in the quiet that followed. Nigma space did not erupt in panic or chaos. It slowed. Patrol routes were revised. Engagement thresholds were raised. Command hierarchies added layers of verification where certainty had once been enough. Every movement of Imperial fleets now carried hesitation, not from fear of defeat, but from fear of miscalculation. Humanity felt the shift immediately. The Empire was no longer trying to crush them, it was trying to understand them. That realization unsettled human command more than open hostility ever had. An enemy that studies you is an enemy preparing something final. So humanity did what it had done since its first days beneath unstable skies. It prepared for the worst by imagining something worse. Human fleets began behaving unpredictably on purpose. Supply convoys altered routes without reason. Patrol groups changed composition mid-mission. Entire task forces vanished from sensors for weeks, only to reappear on the opposite edge of contested space. Nigma intelligence strained to keep up. Every model they built collapsed under contradictory data. Human actions refused to align with incentive structures, threat response curves, or resource optimization logic. Losses did not slow them. Victories did not embolden them. They advanced and withdrew according to something deeper than strategy, purpose. Then the humans struck at something no empire expects to be touched: memory. Coordinated across dozens of systems, human operatives infiltrated Nigma archival nodes, vast repositories where the Empire stored not only records, but identity. The history of conquest. The justification of rule. The carefully curated narrative that defined who the Nigma believed themselves to be. The attack was not destructive, it was revelatory. Archived footage resurfaced across Imperial networks, unaltered and undeniable. Early extinction campaigns. Worlds erased not for threat, but convenience. Species eliminated because they disrupted trade efficiency or ideological uniformity. The Empire had always known these things in abstract. Now they were forced to remember them. Nigma citizens, long insulated from the consequences of expansion, watched their past unfold in brutal clarity. Debate spread. Doubt followed. The unity that had defined Imperial identity began to strain under the weight of its own history. Humanity did not claim responsibility. They did not need to. The Empire retaliated with information suppression, sealing archives and restricting access. But the damage was done. Once certainty cracks, it cannot be resealed by force alone. As internal pressure mounted, Nigma Command made its choice: a decisive end. Deep within Imperial space, beyond regions mapped by any human probe, the Empire activated a contingency older than its founding myths. A convergence of fleets, constructs, and systems designed for one purpose: to erase a threat so completely that it would never be remembered. The target was not Earth, it was humanity's future. Human long-range sensors detected the mobilization as a faint tremor in spacetime, a gathering of mass and intent that bent probability itself. Analysts did not need full data to understand the implication. This was not another warning, it was the endgame. Human fleets began to converge, not toward Earth, but outward, forming lines that did not defend territory, but meaning. Ships scarred from countless battles took position beside newly constructed vessels, crews united by something quieter than defiance, resolve. The stars ahead darkened as the Empire's final force assembled, its scale eclipsing anything seen before. And across human space, a single understanding settled into every mind. They had warned the Empire once. This time, they would not repeat themselves. The convergence was visible before it was detectable. Stars dimmed along the edge of known space, not extinguished, but smothered, as if something vast had passed in front of them. Gravity trembled in slow waves. Jump calculations failed across multiple sectors at once. The Empire's endgame announced itself not with sound or light, but with the quiet collapse of certainty. Human fleets arrived to meet it already knowing they would not all return. They formed no grand formation. No symbolic line. They spread instead like a living thing, adaptive and uneven, every ship positioned not by hierarchy, but by necessity. Veterans flew beside vessels crewed by those who had never seen combat before today. Scarred hulls bore fresh paint over old damage. Names etched into alloy where friends had once stood. Behind them, Earth watched in silence. The Nigma force emerged as a single, impossible structure, fleets nested within fleets, constructs woven into spacetime itself, a moving geometry of annihilation. It was not designed to fight, it was designed to overwrite. The first contact erased 3 human ships instantly, their mass unraveled and folded into nothing. No explosion. No debris. Just absence where life had been. Human fleets surged forward anyway, weapons fire lit the dark, brilliant and furious, crashing against Imperial defenses that bent and absorbed the assault. Human losses mounted immediately. Ships burned. Crews died. And still the advance continued, not accelerating, not slowing, but holding to a grim, deliberate pace. Then humanity did something unexpected. They stopped targeting the fleet. Instead, they targeted the space around it. Human vessels began deploying devices never meant to be used at scale, reality stressors, gravity seeds, temporal anchors built from experimental physics and hard-earned desperation. They did not destroy. They destabilized. Space warped. Time slipped. The Empire's perfect convergence began to strain under the weight of localized chaos. Nigma constructs fought to reassert control, but every correction introduced another flaw. The more order they imposed, the more violently the system reacted. Human ships moved through the fractures instinctively, riding the turbulence rather than resisting it. The battlefield became a storm no one fully controlled. At the center of it all, a human carrier ruptured under sustained fire, its core breaching containment. For a moment, it seemed like another loss swallowed by scale. Then its reactors detonated in sequence, not as a weapon, but as a signal. Across the human fleet, systems responded instantly. Every ship overloaded its remaining power, not into weapons, but into the same destabilizing frequency. Thousands of small disruptions cascaded into one overwhelming rupture. The fabric of space convulsed, tearing the Empire's convergence apart from within. Imperial formations fractured. Constructs lost synchronization. Fleets collided, vanished, or were thrown screaming into distorted escape corridors that collapsed behind them. The overriding failed, the endgame broke. Human ships fell back through the chaos, battered, burning, barely holding together. Many did not make it. Those that did emerged into quiet space, systems flickering, crews exhausted beyond words. Behind them, the vast Nigma force no longer existed as a single will, only fragments remained. The Empire did not pursue, it could not. Across Nigma space, command structures reeled as the truth settled in. Their final solution had not been defeated by superior technology or greater numbers. It had been undone by a species that refused to be erased, refused to retreat, and refused to become what it fought. In the weeks that followed, borders stabilized. Fleets withdrew. Communications resumed, cautious and restrained. No victory declarations were made. No surrender was demanded. There was only an understanding, shared across stars. Humans were not conquerors. They were not saviors. They were the line you did not cross twice. And somewhere in the deep records of the Nigma Empire, the original warning was unarchived, retranslated, and finally understood exactly as it had been sent. Survival was not guaranteed, because humanity would endure.